Hello to all these skaters out there. My name is Victor Halthorpe. I'm an Olympic speed skater and a leg day specialist. And this is my Dryland Bible. In this video, I gathered every single dryland exercise I ever came across and that I found to be useful in a speed skating dryland Bible. So I divided this video in 3 different levels. First off, we're gonna look at the position, then we're gonna move on to the skating movements, and ultimately, how to put power in it. And this also means we're gonna go from some pretty easy exercises at first, and then we're gonna finish off with some very difficult exercises. So if this is one of your first time ever doing dryland, you should go out with the easy ones, try them out at home, try and work with them for a few weeks, even a month or more, and then come back and continue the video from where you left. Because dryland is not something that we can learn in one single day, and even the best skaters still come back to the basics now and then, because they're just so crucial to good skating. As we go through all these exercises, I'm gonna be right down here. I'm gonna divide the screen into a split screen so you can see how my body moves from the front, from the side, from above. And in the meantime, I'm gonna give you some commentaries on how to perform these technically correct and some of the key points that you should try and focus on when you're doing these on your own at home. If you're looking for some advice on how to implement these in your own training program or even how to structure your entire season program, I work as an online coach next to my skating career, so you can hit me up on the email address here below or that you will find in the description, and I'm gonna help you out with either a meal plan or a training plan or both of them. Or if you're not at the point where you're dedicated or ready for a personal individual training plan or meal plan, you can also just check the link that I also put below to my Thinkific skating program. This is a program that is based off from 3 months of practice that applies to every single level. So if you're a skater just looking for new exercises, motivation, or structured training program, there is a link below to try and go on and download that for free. I truly hope you're gonna enjoy these videos and all these exercises, and that you're gonna go on and try them out at home, share them with your friends, your skater buddies, and so on. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to see what I'm doing in my own skating career, you can take a look at my Instagram and hit a follow on that. As promised, you can see me from the front, so you can see how I do the exercises, but you can also see me from the side, so you can see how deep I get and follow my pattern. And you can watch me from up here at the top as well, so you can see how exactly my legs and my body position is moving around as I perform the exercises. However, if you have any more questions, leave a comment below and I'll make sure to come back to you with a good answer. Okay, it's time to get started. The first exercise is the basic position. So the first exercise is the basic position. Obviously, I put this exercise first, not just because it's the most simple exercise, but also because it's the most important exercise. Even the best skaters will manage to mess this up when they're tired enough at the end of a race. So one piece of advice that I'm gonna give to every single skater that's trying to do this program is to start out every single exercise by finding this position. There's a few ways to make sure that you got a correct basic position. In order to have the most efficient position, you want to have your knees bent in a 90-degree angle. And one of the ways you can test that is by putting a fist behind the knee. And if you manage to touch both your calf and your hamstrings, or the rear part of your upper leg, you know you're in a correct position. Another thing to do is to try and see if you can still touch your heels and your toes when you're in that position. Also make sure that you have enough space in between the knees to fit another fist. This is the skater squat, so that's kind of the same thing, except we do a little extension here. But again, it goes for every single exercise we're going to go through today. There's going to be some point throughout the movement or whatever exercise it is where you will have to return to that basic position. So get that straight before you try and move on and work on more complicated exercise, because you gotta fix that right off the start. So one thing that you should notice here is how my knees are not shaking. They're completely straight. By straight, I mean the knees are not caving in, they're not caving out. Try and relax the upper body. There's no reason to be tense when you don't really have to activate more than just the core. You will also notice, if you look at it from this side, how my upper body is not really changing its position. A lot of people have a bad habit of, whenever they extend the legs, they have this habit of raising the shoulders. So try and stay compact, try and stay connected. So here's the narrow squats. The reason I put this in here is you'll notice as we go through, all these exercises are very skating specific. So this one is just to activate some different muscle groups. If you have good skating technique, which you either do or you're gonna have if you keep doing these, you're also gonna activate the side of your legs and your glutes. So you're just gonna activate some other muscle groups, and especially to improve your under push, there's gonna be times where you have center of gravity kind of extra much underneath yourself compared to a standard squat position. So we're gonna use your leg to do that double push underneath yourself. So you're gonna be in the outer edge, and by doing these narrow squats, you're gonna do that a little better. This is also gonna put a little more pressure on your balance skills. So that's another good thing you get out of this one. Here's the wide squats. When you do wide squats, it sometimes feels like you're deeper than you actually are because you get closer to the ground. But it's not a matter of being close to the ground, it's really a matter of getting that 90-degree angle knee bend. So again, this one takes a little extra. You should have a little extra focus on not letting the knees drop to the inside. One way of doing this is by kind of putting a little more pressure and feeling some of your body weight on the outside of your shoe soles. It sounds a little strange, but when you do it, it actually makes a lot more sense. That way you're sure of not putting it on the inside for sure. Especially at the bottom, a lot of people have the habit of putting more pressure on the inside. Again, make sure the upper body's not flying up and down, and try and see if you can have that body weight on the middle part, at the mid part of your shoes, because when you're out skating, you don't want too much on the front of the skates or falling too far to the rear. Also keep the center of gravity forward, make sure your hip is not popping backwards. This one is the push hold. There's a lot of things to really focus on here. I recommend for every exercise, just have a single technical key focus point and then try and work on from there. So this one, you would want your feet to point straight forward because that's the direction you'd be skating in. You always want to keep your shoulder, knee, and toe right above each other, regardless of where they are. Make sure you still keep that 90-degree position, and just keep it solid. If you do this correctly, you have just about all your body weight on the center leg. So for this position, if I wanted to, I'd be able to lift the straightened leg. I'd be able to lift that up in the air without really moving anything or rocking to the side. As you can see, sometimes I use my arms, sometimes I don't. The only recommendation I have here is that if you do use them correctly. Here is the same exercise where I'm actually lifting. When you do this, a lot of people tend to try and like work a counterbalance with the upper body, which is a terrible habit. So instead, activate the side of your glutes and use that to have a correct position. Because if you use your upper body, you're just gonna lose speed and lose power instead of using your upper body to generate more power. Like I mentioned in the beginning, your feet should point straight forward, especially the one in the air. Because if we get the habit of letting that point a little to the side, we're gonna open up the hips, and then we can't keep the pressure for as long as we would want to when we're out skating. Also make sure they're aligned. We can see from above and from the side view here that my feet are pretty parallel to each other, so I don't lose it behind. I just keep it in a straight line. A really good thing to do here is if you have a line on the floor, try and work with that so you can always check that your feet are perfectly aligned. Another thing that you'll notice here is that I generally have my hips pretty flat. Especially in this exercise, I try not to tilt. You can also see how my shoulders are parallel to the ground even when I'm lifting this leg. This exercise is all about isolating. So in theory, nothing but that leg that you lift up should be moving. And if you manage to get that correct, it's gonna help you a lot on the skates, because when you're out skating, you would also not want to lose any power, any of the power that you create with the working leg, because the rest of your body is just too weak to actually hold the position. So it's a really difficult thing to get right. It's a difficult balance to find here. My coach always used to call it the solid noodle, because you got to be as relaxed as possible but still be in a correct position. This one is the weight transfer. If you do this correctly, you're really going to feel how you gradually switch the weight, the body weight, from one leg to the other. So if you paused it down right in the middle, I'd be like a 50-50. And then the goal is to get all the way, especially with the hip, onto the other leg, to the point where again you'd be able to lift up the relaxed leg. So here'd be my right leg, you'd be able to lift that off the ground. And if you're strong enough, you'd be able to do that without tilting the shoulders or rocking the hips. This should really just go on a straight horizontal line. There should be no vertical movement. And again, keep it, especially in the middle, keep it in that 90 degree knee bend. Here's the single leg position. Later on we're going to do single leg up downs, but first we're going to get the position right. So this one is a little easier to actually find the position because you can engage and you can start out by just finding that basic position that we had in the beginning of the video, go down there and then try and lift the other leg off the ground without moving anything. One of the most common mistakes here is that relaxed, the recovery leg as we call it, the one that's just hanging in the air, that you twist that. So if you twist that, move it behind the other leg or further away from the other leg, that's going to rock you out of position. You're going to lose that hip and your shoulders, and the opposite knee is not going to point forward. So everything here should be straight down, straight forward. A nice way to make sure that you're in a correct position is by looking at the recovery leg, this relaxed leg. It should just be vertically straight down because you don't want that to be tense in any way. The more you can get that relaxed, the better blood flow you get and the less fatigue you're just going to accumulate. So that's a very important key point in that one. Now we move on to the squats. Smooth up and down. Try and see if you can keep or maintain a steady rhythm. A lot of people have a habit of speeding up right here, the hardest part, and then keeping a little break at the top or at the bottom, which we should not, because that's not how we skate. We don't keep any breaks, just trying to get that like that smooth, continuous movement. Same should go for your arms. If you're using them, make sure they're coordinated with the legs and that they're not overly tense. Make sure if you look at it from the side here, you can see how my upper body is in the same position throughout. The entire movement is not popping up right here. It's just hanging there. So you use your core and your back, so don't be tense in the shoulders. Here is the skater walk. This one takes a lot of strength in the glutes, and I find this to be one of the most difficult exercises. Because you're moving that leg backwards and you have to make up for that that extra weight to the rear. You have to make up for that with your core, and it's not that easy to have your hips in the right position here. So I recommend people to do this at a very slow pace because it is more difficult than it seems. And it goes for most of these exercises. They're not that difficult to perform, but they're extremely hard to perform correctly. This one is basically the same, but just a tad more difficult because you got to speed up that movement, pulling it from the back up next to the opposite knee. And by doing that, it's very difficult not to try and compensate with the upper body. You would notice here from the side that I really try and keep my shoulders and my hips in a solid position where they're not rocking backwards or forwards when I pull that leg up there. So see, if you manage to get this correct on skates, you're going to be able to use that previous stroke and that recovery stroke in order to create power in your next skating step. This is where a lot of people that still have a good recovery leg, so making that smooth movement with the leg in the air behind, if you're not steady in the rest of your body, it's just going to be wobbly and you're not really going to be able to use that momentum because you're rocking your shoulders out of position or because you can't keep it steady with your core. Here's the Killzone. That's one of the classics. As you can see, there's not a lot of movement here. Unlike the Dryskate that we're going to have a look at in a few minutes, for the Killzone, you're really just trying to stay compact and really feel that body weight transfer. You should almost feel like you're trying to push the ground away from you. You're not really extending anything. You can use the arms like I do here, but just get the body weight onto each leg and be super patient. So really feeling how you're loading up the legs and then moving straight to the side. Don't let anybody tilt or anything tilt. And you should have the feeling of moving onto the leg, not falling onto the leg. The slower the better. You can see I didn't really perform a full recovery movement here. This is the Dryskate. This is where we basically do the same thing. So all the key points I just mentioned for the Killzone, we try and keep those while putting in a little more movement. This is not a full jump, but it is a little more explosive, and you are gonna feel that this exercise is probably a bit harder. So the most common mistake here is that you pop up. You should try and only move horizontally. It's almost impossible, but this is really one of the exercises where you can work on pushing to the side and not losing anything because you're pushing upwards. Again, that's not how we create speed. You're extending the leg, but you're extending it while moving straight to the side. Keep that in mind here. Make sure your hip is going out first. A lot of people, because it's scary, it's a sketchy feeling, to throw your body straight to the side, but make sure you're leading with the hip. Instead of putting the foot out there or the knee out there, then you're just gonna use muscle power instead of your body weight, because you already moved the body weight onto the opposite side. This is the loaded Dryskate. Personally, this is one of my favorite exercises because you're really feeling how you generate that sideways movement with your body power or body weight. So as you go from up there, you go down and then straight to the side. But try and feel that momentum going from a straight leg, from being up. Feel that momentum into a single movement going down and over to the side. Make sure your shoulders are not dropping as you come from up there. Really bring it in together. Don't reach out with the foot. Keep the knees close to each other as you go down. And don't rush it. Make sure that you get all the way down to that basic position we keep talking about before you push to the side. Here goes the extensions. This is a perfect exercise for everybody that struggle with staying on the top of their blades or their wheels. If you have a tendency to pronate to the inside or have knees that are caving in, this exercise is wonderful because it's really going to activate the side of your glutes, the gluteus medius, which is what you use to stabilize or at least pull the knees away from each other. It's one of my personal favorites. It is a difficult exercise, and the main thing to focus on here is that you try and move as little as possible. So if you manage to do this the way it's supposed to, the only thing that really moves is that leg you're pushing or extending to the side. Everything else should just point forward and be steady. The slower the better. And now we're gonna take it up to the next level, so we're gonna do full circles. Unlike the extensions that we just had, where you only got to take care of not falling to the side, this one you also got to make sure you're not falling forwards or backwards, because that's very difficult when you're moving the leg backwards. It's easy to fall forward the rest of the body, but make sure you're using all those small muscle groups to stabilize. Remember to keep a steady pace. Just like these single leg up downs or single leg squats, don't rush it. This is going to be an uncomfortable exercise, but just like core exercises, if you do that, the slower the better. Breathe well, relax any muscle that you're not using. There's no reason to be tense in the shoulders or anything. And yeah, just do those circles. Okay, now we're moving on to the power exercises. These are the ones that are going to be good for your cardio, but that are going to hurt a bunch. The split jumps here, well, the whole goal here is to not jump too far up in the air. Keep a good rhythm, but try and stay low throughout the entire movement. I see a lot of people that develop a habit of like pushing the butt backwards, but what you really want to focus on here is to put your point of gravity or center of gravity more to the front, put it out forwards. So whether that means putting your knees a little further out, using that dorsiflexion, having your knees out in front of your toes, or if it means thinking of having your belly button or your butt pushed a little forward, both are gonna work. Notice how I get my feet all the way in together. Same goes for the knees. So again, when you get tired, still remember to have the belly button forward and not let your shoulders pop up. This is a classic exercise, lunges. I personally find this exercise to be one of the exercises that really challenges my upper body in terms of staying compact. Because you are actually jumping upwards, it's very difficult to not like open up in the core, but you gotta stay compact, keep a round back, and yeah, keep a good rhythm. As you can see, I'm not jumping as high as I can. It's really more about landing low and then generating that force all the way from the low position. Because a habit a lot of skaters have when they're out skating is that they stand, they just glide or roll on one leg, and then at the end of the push, that's when they really start pushing. And this is a perfect exercise to teach yourself that right as soon as you put your leg into the ground, you should try and develop force, because by far the vast majority of all power that you can generate on skates is going to be made when your leg is in between your shoulders, so right under your center of gravity, and not by the end of the push. Here's the skate jumps. I believe a lot of you have already tried that one. There's a bunch of different variations. You can do it with the arms in the back, as I'm doing here. I'm personally a long distance skater, so I find that to be a little more specific to the competitions I do. But you can also use the arms. I think I'm going to show that in a few seconds. What really matters is that you catch it in a low position and you jump from a low position. Because when we're out skating, we don't have the time to land on a straight leg and then try and find a position before we can initiate the next stroke. It has to be a smooth movement where we land low and we jump from a low position. Because this one is a little more uncomfortable as we're jumping, it's very easy to become a little too tense in that recovery leg, so the leg that's hanging in the air. But make sure that you keep that relaxed, because again, that's the key to a good blood flow, and that's how we don't blow up when we're out skating. Also, don't let your upper body tilt to the sides. It's very difficult when you land to not let it fly out a little further. So when I'm landing on my right leg, I try and not let my upper body fly too far out to the right. Don't open up at the hip, make sure everything points forward. And again, the more tired you get, the more focus you gotta put on staying in that 90-degree knee bend. This exercise here is a double jump, skate jumps. Now I'm doing it in a way where just as I land, I initiate that little double jump, but it's better to find your balance and catch everything correctly in between every jump. So rather take a little rest and figure that out before you just rush it and jump as fast and high as you can. Here's the crossback jumps. So this is another variation of the skate jump, but with this crossback, it really allows it to put in more power, because we take the whole balance part out of the equation. Once that's set, you should still aim to have as much of your body weight on that jumping leg. So the rear leg that goes behind, the crossing leg, should really just be there as a little support and not have too much weight on it. A bad thing or a bad habit that a lot of people tend to get when they're doing this kind of skate jumps is that they let the upper body twist. Good thing, this goes for all the exercises. If you do have a mirror, try and do these exercises in front of the mirror. It's a really good way to test yourself. It also makes sure that you're not looking down, because when you're out skating, you can't just be looking at your own feet. It's also a habit that makes you stand a little taller, because when you look at your feet, you generally tend to pop your butt up a little. So having a mirror in front of you that you keep looking into is definitely not a bad thing. Here's the outward hops. For those people that are trying to improve their double push, this is a wonderful exercise because it is exactly what you need. Pushing underneath yourself. So also going to get you a little more stable on the outer edge. Again, the goal here is to catch it in a low and solid position. I do try and work on my rhythm here, but if this is a little too much for you, it's more important that you find a good level of stability before you go on and continue the jumps. Here's the leg switches. This exercise is pretty simple. You just switch your weight from one leg to the other. It's kind of jumping, it's kind of a weight transfer exercise. The goal is to try and move as little as possible and just have that stable upper body and let the legs do the work underneath you. Yeah, really focus on just being relaxed on that leg that you push out to the side so that you manage to catch it with the other leg as fast as possible. This is also a great core exercise because you got all that movement going on underneath yourself, but you gotta catch it and you gotta make sure everything above the hips stay in a straight line pointing forward. When you push the legs out to the side, you also want to make sure that you're not letting them fly backwards, because that's how we lose momentum when we're skating. This is the final exercise of the program, the skate shuffle. It's a pretty intense one, and there's really one technical thing you got to focus on, is to not pop up. It's very difficult when you go from side to side, especially when you accumulate a bunch of fatigue from the rest of the program, to not pop up a little. So really try and force yourself to stay down in terms of knee bend, but also the shoulders. As you can see, I load it a little every time I'm on to the side. I stay a little longer, but then in the middle of it, I try and be as effective and quick as possible. Again, just like skate jumps and dry skate, imitations always lead with the hip. And remember, before every single exercise, go back to that basic position, because they all start with a basic position, and that is really the most essential thing there is to good skating. And that, guys, was the last exercise I have for you today. But I have more than 200 workout videos on my YouTube channel that you still gotta check out. So subscribe and check them out, because they're gonna hurt, but they're gonna be worth it. Thanks a lot for watching. See you for the next videos.